I think that if someone came into business today without having come up with AI and now just saw, hey, this exists, I think they would have such a significant advantage over any of us who have our preconceived notions of how product works, how to use product for business, any of that. Because what AI is doing is it is forcing us to fundamentally start from scratch.
So today we got a special guest, Pritesh. Marc, this may be cool because you are our the original OG, first ever guest on the Super App podcast. So welcome, man. Super excited to be with you.
Hey, I'm honored. Been listening for a while. You know, we've been talking back and forth about getting this going, so I'm happy to be here. Been missing you guys.
This is so cool. So for those of you who don't know, Mr. Marc Lafleur, he is a founder, author, speaker, just released his new book, which we're going to talk about. And Pritesh and I are going to get into product, AI engineering, and everything that happens with the Super App. But Marc, take us. Writing a book is it's almost like building a company in and of itself. You have to sit down, organize your thoughts, make sure you get this artifact up and running. And first, it's got a super cool name, True Founder, which is amazing. And it's based on, like you shared, it's based on your last exit, on the truLOCAL exit, which is super cool. But take us through why? Why did you write this, and who is this for?
Yeah, I guess, writing a book is a lot like starting a company, where if you look at it as a whole, it's overwhelming. But if you deconstruct it into its little sort of daily tasks, it becomes a whole lot easier. And I'm not a very good writer. I was never, if you ask my high school teachers or university teachers if I would even write an essay, let alone a book, they would laugh you out the room. I was like a C's get degrees kind of kid. But ironically, when truLOCAL sold, which I think was my ticket to being able to write a book, essentially over the course of 5 years, here in Canada, we started a D2C food company called truLOCAL, grew it to about $20 million. And then 3 weeks after my 30th birthday, we were acquired. Forbes reached out about their book deals and how they, essentially work with authors, bring their ideas to life, and essentially act as the publisher. And I knew that one of my biggest weaknesses was writing. I'm like a thinker, and I don't say that in a good way. My brain, I absolutely have ADHD. And it wasn't until I started truLOCAL and 5 years of being a founder that I finally became a good note taker. I was the type of person who thought that I could I just got a great idea. You're driving or you're in the shower and this amazing idea comes. Okay, no problem. I'll get to where I'm going in 5 minutes, or I'll get to my notepad in 5 minutes. I'll write it down. Well, that never works, because within 2.2 seconds, it's gone out of your mind. So truLOCAL taught me how to be a note taker. And I was really excited about that because I noticed how it made me better in general, especially over long tasks. But that note taking was the limit. And the idea of writing a book was going to force me to essentially double down on this skill that was really valuable, but that I was bad at. You look at a lot of really prolific, just essentially anybody who's really successful has a good job of writing down their ideas, expanding on them, all that type of stuff. If you can't write your ideas down, it kind of stays one-dimensional. So the idea of writing a book came around, and at first I was a little apprehensive, but I realized the company just sold. I was on a 2-year contract to oversee the new CEO, which was our COO, so fairly simple, didn't really have a whole lot to do. So I knew I was going to have a bunch of time on my hands, so that's when I decided to do it. And the idea, I think the number one thing about writing a book is you realize once you get the chapter list done, it's a breeze. But getting the chapter list done will take a year. So I started this book, many times. So the whole premise we were just talking about, but True Founder, what no one has the guts to teach you about starting your first company. It's all about the fact that when we were building truLOCAL, almost none of the business advice that I saw on LinkedIn or from all these gurus or influencers ever applied to me, because it was all about being comfortable. It was all about being safe. It was all about don't burn out, all these things that sound amazing. In theory, of course, why would you work to the point where you're sick or when you burn out? However, the reality is when you're a first-time founder, you have put everything you have into this business, all of your money, all of your friends' money. You've probably hired friends. You've taken money from investors. And the alternative to waking up when you feel completely burnt out and at the wit's end is complete and total failure, crash and burn, bankruptcy. And to me, working through and just finding a way to make it happen is regardless of anything going on in your life, is much more realistic and way better than just giving up and quitting. So I thought there was an area in the market where we could talk about that and just be honest about it. So that's where the idea of the book came. But what I struggled a lot with was trying to weave in my own story with truLOCAL, but also have it be a tactical guide. Because I think there's a lot of books that are very fluffy, a lot of motivation, rah, just work harder. And as a founder, I was very sensitive to that. I would always kind of see these articles and be like, I didn't learn anything. Like, I need tactical advice. So that's what took the longest amount of time, was just kind of structuring it in a way that, okay, there's a story here, but every chapter you have to be able to take something that you can immediately go and apply. So that's kind of where the whole idea came out. About a year to do the chapter list, and then about 6 to 7 months to actually write it out. So as with business, finding that product market fit, finding that killer feature, bringing it all together so it's not just a bunch of features, it actually becomes a product. That takes the long stuff. Once you actually figure out what works and you start executing on it, things go a little bit quicker.
Dude, you said something super cool there that Pritesh says often, which is, hey, you have an idea that's cool. Is it a feature or is it a product, right? I think a lot of times entrepreneurs just have a feature idea. And, because you got this feature product business hierarchy a lot of times. So maybe, Pritesh, I'll kick off with this one. There's something super interesting about both truLOCAL and, what Pritesh and I do day to day, which is real. There is this interesting mix of a product-backed, product-first company that also does product-enhanced services, right? So we have this product ecosystem, and we have the services that funnel around it, call it real estate. Very similar for you at truLOCAL. You were like, hey, I've got this product infrastructure that actually facilitates this, and then you've got the D2C component associated with it. Maybe I would love your kind of thoughts around first-time founder thinking about building something. It's very easy to say, well, maybe I'll just go make the services thing work, or maybe I'll just build an app and hopefully that comes together. You had to bring both of these together. I'm curious about your perspective on product. What is did you lay awake at night obsessing about product? Did you think, hey man, if only can we solve this? Kind of talk about your thinking and evolution of product overall.
Yeah. So, man, I can unpack this for a while. So it's funny, the truLOCAL days, it was direct to consumer food. So essentially we were a subscription box like, HelloFresh, Good Food, any of these companies. You can go online, order the product, gets delivered to your house. Nowadays, I'm working on AI SaaS, and those are completely, they could not be more different. However, the same fundamental business principles apply. What is the problem, and what is the most elegant solution to that problem? And then you can start to kind of deconstruct that. So I think it kind of depends where you want to start. There's no right or wrong answer. Let's say you're starting with a product. Well, a lot of the times, if you're starting with a product, a lot of people get really hung up on, oh, I'm a product. That's what I am. And they put these boxes around themselves because they view themselves as a product. And what that fundamentally does is it takes away the idea of solving a problem because they're constrained by, but I'm a product. And I think if you remove that idea of what type of business you are, a product, a service, anything, and just try to solve the problem for the individual, regardless of what type of business it is, it opens up a lot of doors and you get to product market fit a whole lot faster. An example would be something like SaaS, just we'll use, software as a service, where you run into a situation where, okay, this tool that we've started building, the MVP, right? The minimal viable product, just to see if there's any sort of adoption here. And as with any product that is launched before it's ready to test the market, which is the way that I would recommend doing it, the product will not fulfill all of the needs of the client. I think the answer to that is you should subsidize those flaws in the product with services. And as you get better, eventually the product will get better and it'll be able to do more of the problem it's trying to solve, and it'll require less complementary services to get the job done. What a lot of people tend to do is, because it's a product and the product is not fulfilling the promise to the customer yet because it's early, they just leave this giant gaping gap of what the product, the solution is supposed to be. And they can easily go in and say, hey, you know what? It was supposed to do this and it did 70% of the job. I can easily just behind the scenes fulfill the last 30% by providing a service, whether it's free or charged, but they don't because they're a product. And I think that's a huge thing that I've learned in the SaaS world that wasn't so much a problem in the truLOCAL days, because the truLOCAL days, we weren't as product obsessed. And that's changed today. But the reason was we just had a great product at the gate. It was better quality meat. There wasn't a lot to go in and out on with that. It was just we had a really good product. We sourced it from great places. For us, it was all of the infrastructure around that product that took all the time. So a lot of the stuff didn't really apply in direct-to-consumer food or a lot of direct-to-consumer physical products. The products either good or it's not. There's not a ton. If you're reinventing the wheel, really trying to do R&D on a new product, sure, it applies, but not many people are doing that. a lot of people are just trying to sell something that is commoditized, but they want to layer on a brand, customer service, some sort of bells and whistles, and then make it so it's no longer a commodity. Then you're worried about, okay, how do I actually run this business? But in the software space, and a lot of people that are trying to build product, I think they really got to start thinking about, okay, yeah, maybe a product that is high margin, self-serve, low touch, high value in terms of it does the job it wants to do. That's the goal. But in the first year, I doubt it's going to do that. And so many people shoot themselves in the foot by not just subsidizing that with some sort of service to fulfill the goal. So that's kind of how you look at it. And I think vice versa, the other way around would be, services looking to offer a product. So let's say you're a service provider, and of course, your guys' case, real estate agents, maybe some of them are trying to develop their own, unique, I don't like using the word proprietary, but their own sort of service or something or product on the side of it. If you're looking to develop a product out of a service, I think the thing that would make the most sense is figure out what is the actual repetitive core of that problem you're trying to solve. It shouldn't be the entirety of your service, I don't think, because then really, why are you in that service in the first place if you could just automate it with a product? But there's probably 20% of the service you offer that you could just self-serve tool out. And that's an interesting way to look at building a product out of a service. So whether it's product into service or service into product, there's kind of ways to look at it if you always just remember that you got a problem to solve for the customer, regardless of what the business is labeled as, just focus on that.
Yeah. I'll say one thing, and Pritesh, I have a question for you. Our product, at some point we'll give you a demo, our product is we have this insane machine to process transactions that we've built internally. And it's pretty cool that we have 100% adoption. So we're probably one of the only brokerage firms in the world that we have 100% adoption of our product, because every single agent that actually utilizes, that does a transaction utilizes our platform in some way. But Pritesh knows this. I'm an engineer first kind of guy. So I'm in the product every day. And when I'm in client appointments, I actually demo the product. And so I'll say, hey, here's our, we have a pizza tracker, and clients like to know that, hey, these are the 16 things that are going to happen for us to kind of sell this home. And so I can tell the client, hey, here are the 16 things that are going to happen in this service that we're going to provide you. But to them, it's a service, but they don't see the deep connection of how I'm going to manage this service for them. So I say, hey, here are these 16 things that are going to happen. They're going to happen in this linear timeline, but how we manage it is what is going to give us the unfair advantage. Let me show you. And then I open up the laptop and I show them the pizza tracker and how we do it. And that's when it comes to life, because it productizes the service in so many ways. So they feel this kinship, they feel this value added advantage. And as you said, when folks start to supplement a product's holes with some service, or a service's holes enhancement with the product, it changes the client's end user's experience of how they touch, feel, perceive all of it. So Pritesh, I don't know how if you feel similarly, or how you react to Marc's comment on product and service kind of mix.
Yeah, I mean, the first part of the conversation was around what happens when someone comes to you and say, I want to build this product, right? And I found Marc's answer very interesting. My answer has actually changed over the last 18 years, and my answer actually changes based on the person who's asking me. So I'll answer that question. I've done 4 businesses now, and 1 has failed and 3 kind of had good exits. So I've been through bootstrap to raise money. And when a business person comes to me and says, hey, I have this product idea, I don't ask them what's the TAM. I just say, who's going to build it? Do you have a team? And we spend a lot of time thinking about a team. When a technical person comes and says, I got a beautiful product idea, I say, how many people are going to buy? Then I say, are you solving cancer? That's my analogy of saying, is it a global good project where money doesn't matter? Because if you could solve cancer, then you're doing so much good in the world that it's not a money conversation. Or else it's a money conversation. What's your TAM? How big is this idea? And is that the market you're going to go after? Once they answer those questions, then I start helping them peeling the onion on, okay, what do you need to grow the product? And in the Silicon Valley, there's this, phrase, fake it before you make it, which is exactly what, or not exactly, but in line with what Marc is saying, subsidize it with a service, or literally hire a bunch of people who are just clicking buttons for you, or manually updating the databases for you, or whatever it takes, right? So,
AKA Amazon, the Amazon, the Amazon Go stores or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Mechanical Turk too was like for the time was a great idea. Now it's much harder to get any usage on it. But something like that, right? Like the customer doesn't need to know your pain. Like the customer just needs to have like an experience. And once they have the experience, then everything is game, right? So that, and in terms of our product, right? Like we've gotten to a point where yes, they have to have 100% adoption, but we also think about it from an experience standpoint, or from a, people come to us saying, what's your technology? Like, can you show us the technology? And it's like that, those conversations are extremely hard. Like, I think a year and a half from now, those conversations will be the best conversations Sharran will have, because there's something that we're working on now. But today it's hard. So his approach to like, let me just walk you through the demo kind of takes out that question on like, what's your technology? Because we don't build CRMs. We don't build, beautiful websites for you, because there is so much fragmentation in this industry. There are hundreds and hundreds of website makers. Are we going to make the best website? Probably not. Right. So I think it's also about focus too, right? It's like, what do you think is your core expertise, and what do we have? What is our special sauce? We've gotten to a point where we have 21,000 agents. We have distribution. That's our special sauce. We have distribution. We don't need to build every little thing that everybody else is building, because they don't have distribution. Like the best example would be Slack versus Microsoft Teams, right? You can use those charts are floating around on the internet right now. Like Teams just rocketed because all Microsoft had to do is focus on the product, but their distribution was already lined up and just rocketed. Years and years of, creating concept and proving concept and like having something that works, and then someone else just comes and like literally clones the whole thing, right? So
yeah, and I think there's like a bit of a cliche running around now, sort of like circa 2022, post-COVID sort of growth of, just really, really like take off of social media, TikTok, where it's like first-time founders focus on product and second-time founders focus on distribution, which is fascinating and sad in a couple ways, because it's so true. You can have 1 million followers and have the worst product on the planet, guarantee you're still going to make a couple $100,000 in sales just by announcing. And on the flip side, you've got someone building a fantastic product. This adds so much value, but, makes a post and it falls flat on 6 people and it doesn't even get out there. And now you're starting to see it a lot more. I remember with truLOCAL, what we used to pay influencers or affiliates was 10%, and that was considered a lot. Now, once again, that was in a direct-to-consumer business, but that was pretty much best practice around then. The one thing about direct-to-consumer businesses is like they were like the knife fights of 2015 to 2020. Paid advertising, affiliate marketing, really deconstructing that, like, look, your business is essentially driving traffic. Let's figure out where those traffic sources are coming from. What's your website conversion rate, lead capture versus actual conversion? And it's just deconstruct it and treat each one of those like a lever. And of course, influencers and affiliates were huge on that. We were onboarding like 80 to 100 micro influencers a month. Like it was crazy. But that was because there was still such a big value on the product, and people hadn't necessarily quite triple tapped on this idea that you could just have one person go ahead and make a post about you and have it blow up. In fact, what we found at that time was we still would get, it was always the age-old tale. 80% of our influencers would get, 20% of our influencers are getting 80% of the sales, and it was never who you thought it was going to be. But where I'm going with that is just that now, like, you see businesses, you get a builder. So Pritesh, to your point, you go talk to a technical co-founder. You don't have to, I don't care how you're building it. I know you can build. Your limitation is, can you sell? Can you get it out there? Can you market it? Right. And on the flip side, what you notice is, you get your, like, so myself, I'm non-technical. My biggest weakness is I can't code. Right. However, we should segue that at some point into AI, because this is the lines are blurring a little bit. But you get this very small crack teams of people that are building amazing products, and they're just partnering out the gate. Hey, I'll give you 40%, right? I'll give you 30% equity in this business because you have my direct audience, and I want you to go ahead and do this. You see it with a lot of these AI tools that are coming out where, businesses now fundamentally used to have these, employee stock option plans. I'm not sure what's called in the US, but here in Canada, that's what they're called, essentially to offer, stock options to your employees. Now they're setting them up exclusively for their influencers, because it's like, before I even launch my product, before I spend $1 in marketing, I'm going to build this product and I'm going to go find 10 of the biggest names in the space. I'm going to offer them equity to start talking about it. And that's kind of what the power of distribution is nowadays. And it's been obvious, like people have been doing this for a while, but now it really is becoming so apparent. So you're getting this like merging of strengths and weaknesses to get these products out the door so much quicker.
I'll say one thing, super interesting that Pritesh and I are smiling because it's going down the path of exactly what's happened over the last 18, 24 months for us. But a lot of it, there's an insane kind of feedback loop, right? So if I'm out talking to our end consumer, our end customer, which is our agents, and so I remember at last year, I was talking to a lot of independent brokerages who wanted to come to Real, and after a few conversations, I was like, hey, we should do this. And then everyone was like, dude, you can't do this. You can't support it. I was like, no, we can do it, but let's do a pilot. So we did five of these independent brokerages. They came on board. Everyone was happy. And then I called Pritesh. I'm like, dude, this is a shit show. Let me tell you why, right? Because what I thought would work did not work. And we are having a product-based friction because all of these different brokerages have different business models. And then Pritesh was like, all right, hey, I've been thinking about this for like 3 years now from the get-go. Now that you have distribution, I can go build the thing that you want. So it was not like, hey, let's go build it and then Sharran will sell it. It was like I'd already pre-sold it. And so I said, hey, can you tell me when I can tell these people this is going to go live? He's like, you can tell them January 1. I was like, do not buffer this. He's like, you can tell them January 1. I'm like, okay. So I told them January. And so our new model right now, which is helping teams and brokerages integrate, using product, which as of today, that what Pritesh and I know of, no one has, because we pre-sold, we got the pain, and then he and I talked through it. That has actually given us the foundation for our entire growth. So we kind of reverse engineered the distribution into product as opposed to taking the product and then saying I can get distribution from it. And Pritesh, I don't know if you have a thought around that, but that was a really good example of it.
No, I agree with you. And I think I distinctly remember from 2021 all the way to 2024, people will come and ask us, like, hey, can you manage my team for us? Like, can you manage my caps? Can you manage my business? The problem is that once you take on that, it's not a feature. It's a responsibility, right? Because feature is like, okay, I would love to invite somebody. A responsibility is like, now I own your accounting. You're going to rely on our product to be correct so you can distribute, whether it's distributions or your taxes or whatever. You want to download reports. I mean, they're wrong. You're going to file bugs and I'm responsible for this. We stayed away from it for the longest time. We knew exactly all the use cases because if we took on that responsibility and if we are investing, probably millions of dollars by now on that feature, we need to show some kind of revenue attachment to this. So as soon as we had the distribution, which Sharran in this case, it became easy, and now it's accelerating because entire brokerages can move to us with I kid you not, one click. It's nearly one click.
Yeah, it's becoming so much more apparent nowadays that, and I do wonder why it wasn't the norm. Like this whole idea of product first, and I'm a huge supporter of build a great product. The whole idea, right? People used to say it, I think there's a cliche that goes around now. You can spend $1 million on marketing and marketing a crappy product, or you can spend no dollars on marketing and put it all into making an amazing product. I don't necessarily know that works the same way nowadays. Like there's something to be said about, if you have this distribution, you can start trying and teasing out and seeing what that audience wants. What do they need? How can you service them the best? And if you have a good relationship with them, as long as you let them know, hey, look, we're piloting this, we're trying it, we want to build a product for you, you now have an amazing test market that you can probably generate some revenue from, but also get amazing feedback. But the ability for you to take any product, anything, whether it's an MVP or fully flushed out, and immediately give it your entire network, that is something that even the best product in the world can't really compete with, right? At the end of the day, that there's so much value to that. I think like one of the most like relatable examples of that is like in the music industry, which I know this is really random, but if you think about labels and music back in the day, you used to have to be an amazing artist. So let's equate that to having to make an amazing product. If you made an amazing product, you can go get VC money, private equity money, and they'll help support the business, allowing you to market this amazing product. Well, back in the day with musicians, you used to have to be a rock star. You're a rock star. You're unknown, you're undiscovered. And a label is going to come in and do all of the work around you. We're going to take you and we're going to promote you to our existing network. So it was all about the product first, aka the musician first. Nowadays, labels don't want you. You can be the best singer in the world. If you don't have a SoundCloud account, if you don't have 1 million followers, if you don't already have an audience, they don't want you anymore. The value is switching. You could be the worst artist in the world. We see it all the time, these horrible artists, but massive followings. And the labels are like, yep, we're going to go ahead and accelerate you. So it is kind of like this fundamental shift in how we approach, whether it's business growth, whether it's revenue growth, whether it's the value of an individual, right, as an audience. It's very interesting times in that sense. I think it's going to get crazier with AI, obviously. The ability to,
Yeah, let's talk about that. I think both of you, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, Mark, but internally we call Pritesh the Jedi, right? He's the head of our Jedi Council. But most importantly, I think that the conversations that he and I have been having a lot about is our industry, and we equated our industry just as being services first. And then we took a hard stand, which is, hey, we're product first. And so this enhances the value of the service. And now we're reorienting our entire thinking, which is like, hey, how can we make our entire business AI first? And it's not I don't think it's you just wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm just going to switch my product focus to the AI focus. It's a philosophical switch into how you think about everything. So now it's like, hey, Sharran, when you start like doing coaching calls, you need to stop because you need to prep for your coaching calls differently, because all of that needs to be, ingested into our AI system completely different. So you have to think differently. So Pritesh, I'm curious for you and Mark to kind of chat about this is, how does this product evolution, if you knew nothing, like if you're last 18, you knew nothing and you were born and you just started being an entrepreneur in this kind of new AI world, does it change the way you approach product?
It's really interesting. So literally yesterday, we were discussing internally on a product management role. And I came to the conclusion that I think there's a new role called the AI product manager. And maybe it's already out there, but I haven't seen them yet. But like the idea is that in order to product manage an AI product, which is predominantly chat-based, you truly have to understand at a very technical level how LLMs work, or how the underlying AI models work, and the limitations and the capacity of each of these models to build some product around it, right? So that's one. And then two is like a fun exercise for us to do would be, in the last 2 years, what's the one app that you have adopted? Can you name one app that you can't live without, but it came out in the last 2 years?
Only ChatGPT.
It's crazy. So that gives you that like kind of almost ties our conversation, because I don't have one, right? I'll tell you the only app that I truly changed in my day-to-day work was Superhuman. I actually committed to Superhuman, but that's it. And that's like not an AI product. So you can see how what Mark was talking about is like there is this change in products. There was the last hot product that I remember was like Notion or something that builds a beautiful product, completely different. But again, they have adoption issues too, because it was so radically different that there is a problem there. But at least there was a big splash, and there was like everybody was talking about it and stuff like that. I don't remember anything after this, right? Consumer apps are drying up, and there's a whole new stream of AI-based wrappers coming out left and right. But I think it's like the conversation goes back to feature versus product.
Yeah, I got a lot on that. So, okay, right out the gate, in terms of products, I think Canva and Figma are very interesting products, because Canva, obviously massive, I think is just now recently finding its step. Like, where it's like, this is a serious player and a massive competition to Adobe and the incumbents. This is a product, and we talk about it all the time, where it's like, it's very difficult to describe if you didn't already know what it does. And that's why they had adoption issues for so long. What is it, an editing tool? Is it a editing tool, drag and drop? What is it? Now that everybody knows what Canva is, like, it's difficult to live without Canva, especially as a founder. You're in there all the time, from note-taking to graphic design to all this type of stuff. And Figma, very similarly, was one that took years. I forget, they were like 3 or 4 years before even making any revenue and just ticking away at it. So the question then becomes, with AI, what does that look like? The first question he asked was, what would you do differently, if you didn't know anything about AI and started today? I think that if someone came into business today without having come up with AI and now just saw, hey, this exists, I think they would have such a significant advantage over any of us who have our preconceived notions of how product works, how to use product for business, any of that. Because what AI is doing is it is forcing us to fundamentally start from scratch. AI as a supplement on top of our current workflows and process, that is good, but that's what's going to get us to like the 20 to 30% improvements, which I think people should be excited about. I think the problem that we have with AI right now, particularly in real estate, is this assumption that you're going to get 99% of the job done for you. I use this example when I did the talk for you guys, where it's like, listen, if I told you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, just a year before ChatGPT, that there's a tool that'll do 60% of your work for you, you just got to review it. You'd throw money at us left, right, and center, no questions asked. Nowadays, you get one word that you don't like in an output, and you're like, this is garbage, never going to use it again. So what I always say is that right off the bat, even if you're a real hard hitter, you're a real go-getter, you know what getting 20% of your time back is. Like if someone told you can get 20% of your time, you're like, oh my God. Like the A players appreciate that. The C players are kind of like, oh, only 20%? What's that going to do for me? Well, that's kind of a whole other conversation. But I think very easily with the way that we think about AI and product and business today, you can very quickly get 20 to 30% improvements. If you want to get those 80% improvements, you have to fundamentally strip away everything you know about business, everything you know about communication with your team, everything you know about creating content, everything you know about assessing data, everything you know about pretty much every system and process you have around business, and then start with this idea of, what do I want to pass through AI? What part of my business is now being looked at through an AI lens first? And then starting to go from there. That's a very difficult thing to do with large organizations. I think that's why you're starting to see a lot of these kind of like overnight hyper growth AI products coming out. So that's an interesting part. So I think if someone today was like, hey, you've got all these things you could do, AI is one of them, they would have such a better advantage because they would always default to AI. Everything that would start with AI, I would start, you have a Teams call, let me start with my AI recorder. Okay, my note taker, no, I'm going to go ahead and get this. My content creation, no, let me ask this. My content count, how am I doing all that stuff? You're going to start going through AI. I think that's a big advantage. Now, the one thing I do want to say is the AI wrapper thing. I love this conversation. So obviously, with the lab, so we do tons of AI products. We do everything from AI wrappers all the way through to like one-off sort of custom implementations for a business that just has a very, very specific problem they want to get solved. Everything from, our claim to fame where we started was we automated an entire newsletter. So small stuff, but what it was is that, as you guys know with AI, it's very easy to get a good output once. It's very difficult to get a good output 99 out of 100 times in the exact format that you want while changing variables. That's kind of where we come in. So newsletters that take a ton of time from people that aren't just content-based, but maybe they have like 8 different sections in their newsletter that has to pull data from different areas. We've done stuff like that. Obviously, as you guys know, kind of our crown jewel right now is realestatecontent.ai. We've done product for compressed air companies. So essentially, trying to crunch the data and just condense a report that takes 6 weeks down to, 1 week. The one thing I'll say about that is that the AI wrapper side of things, I don't actually look at that as a bad thing. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just powered by GPT-4 or powered by any of these models. It's just a wrapper. Well, isn't that pretty much every single thing on the web? Isn't it a web app just like a wrapper for an SQL database? Really, we almost take away the value, regardless of how simple or easy it is. It's the value that's being provided that has the biggest impact. Now, once again, we're talking very one-dimensionally, even prior about what makes a good business, what's a feature versus a product. We're not layering on the experience of the founder or the user experience, right? Once again, subsidizing a product with a service, that's a great way to get to where you got to go. Not a great user experience, but we're talking one-dimensionally. If you look at something like an AI wrapper, I think you can provide a lot of value and it is worth something. However, of course, the two-dimensional side of it is what's the competitive moat? What's stopping someone from copying it? So that's the only thing I have against these AI wrappers is that how do you defend against it? But in terms of the value they provide, once again, the biggest problem people have is they don't want to take the time to learn how to prompt properly, right? You can do all of the things that you want. Use, ChatGPT, use any of the chatbots, and you can do whatever you want, but then try to explain to someone how to do proper prompting. They'll listen for about an hour, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm not getting it done. So the wrappers I find are just that next level of user interface that makes it a little simpler for people. So it's like the whole thing, I think in a year is going to be fascinating. And people always ask, what's the prediction? What's the prediction? I'm 100% torn on, hey, we're starting to reach a bit of a plateau with AI, specifically LLMs. Is it really going to be something that if we just chuck in more compute, we will get exponentially better? There's an argument, right? I'm on the side that I do believe that, but on the flip side, until we get these LLMs to access tools on a regular basis, whether it's Google search, whether it's your calendar, whether it's your email, Word, your apps, until it becomes an operating system, and then you have this interoperability thing where it's like, until these LLMs, if we have to custom code every single LLM to manage every single tool, you have an interoperability issue where it's like, do we really have agents? Do we really have AIs that can do things for you? If it doesn't have this, hey, if it can't access Notion, well, I can't get it to go ahead and update my Notion doc. I'm curious as to if in the future that's going to be the big unlock, is like this interoperability of LLMs being able to access any tool. It can teach itself how to use a tool and get access to it. That's where I think things start to get crazy. That's where I think we start to get into this world of like the solopreneur creating $1 billion company. I think until then, it's going to be, we're at a bit of a plateau right now where LLMs are getting smarter, but they still can't do much more until we get that interoperability sort of thing where they can access any tool they need to.
So Pritesh, I have a question for you and you and Mark, but I'll tell you guys, Pritesh, I've shared this story with you. Mark, after we saw you in Banff, I actually broke my hand on the last day of it. So I was in a cast for 7 weeks, broke my hand, and it was my dominant hand, so I couldn't really do much, and because I was in a cast. And if you think about it, just if folks that are listening, just put your hand behind your back and try to put your dominant hand behind your back and try to run your life. It is super, super hard. Like, it is super challenging, right? I even had to get to the point where I was telling with Pritesh that I had to change my passwords because I couldn't do like shift on my right side. So I had to do like everything with my left hand. And so here's the crazy part, but life still goes on, right? No one really cares. Life still goes on. So I was like, how do I build presentations? How do I do that? This is like, what I do is I speak and sell daily. Like, how do I build this stuff? So I got to the point where I just talk to camera. Otter.ai got my entire text out. ChatGPT would summarize it, and Gamma.app would build the slides. So I would build yes, you're going from tool to tool, but I was able to go tool to tool and not use my dominant hand at all. And so that's interesting because if in the past world, like I always used to tell my friends, the person that understands Zapier or Make or something like that has insane ability to like view a system in a very thoughtful way. They're like, hey, I understand this system, and I understand an API call to it. Like even I sometimes will talk to Pritesh. I'm like, hey man, can you just give me a webhook and I can just do all my work myself? And he's like, you're so weird. And I'm like, just give me, like, I don't build anything for me, right? So Jenna and I, our CEO, just surface a webhook for us and we can do everything with it. It's easier for his team. It's easier for us. We can do that. But that gives us deep understanding of these systems. So my question for both of you as we kind of wrap up is this: as somebody that's listening who's either a PropTech founder or a real estate agent, who's an engineer, who's a product person, who's our team members that are listening, if you had to say, hey, for you to get AI mastery or be on the path to doing more things by getting your hands in and learning AI at a visceral level, what advice would you give somebody to say, hey, go do this thing or go learn that thing, and it'll give you you will have a much better edge over the person that's just dabbling?
I'm always going to circle back to right now. Currently, I think we in this interesting space where in a year this will become more obsolete. However, if you learn it now, it'll compound your advantage when it does become more obsolete. But this idea of prompting, like proper prompting, like properly speaking, and then just use ChatGPT. The thing that does is it teaches you how to talk computer. Look, if even coding, okay, if you guys are technical, I'm non-technical, there is a way of thinking when you code. Even if coding was plain English for any other person, you take any normal person, they still couldn't code, even if it was plain English, because there is a way, how every single thing is literal, how a colon can make a difference, every word makes a difference. That's a way of thinking, and it gives you a deep understanding of how computers and machines work. Now with AI, we are essentially living in that world where plain English is like code. And if you can get really good at articulating what you want this model to do, you can make it do anything, right? The idea of chaining prompts together and, pulling in variables and outputs from different places to get these solutions that you want, all of that is subsequent. All of that comes after just learning how to talk to these computers. And I think what will happen, people talk about it. Of course, I'm on the other side of it, but people are like, prompting is going to become obsolete because the tools are going to get so good that you won't have to prompt anymore. I don't necessarily believe that. And even if it did, you still want to know how this computer is thinking, how literally it is looking at every single word you put in. And I think that's what's going to get the most out of any AI tools for the future. If you just have this fundamental understanding of, hey, listen, this is how a computer is thinking, this is how you need to speak to it. And right now, the training wheels are still on. It's like the idea of never having learned math in school and only using a calculator. Right. You can get by no problem in life with just a calculator. However, you are at a huge advantage if you at least had some fundamental understandings of math before you got to the calculator. I think that's where it's going to go with AI, where, look, we will be at a point right now where this thing, the holy grail of what people want from like a productivity AI, and not to talk on the AGI side, I always say I spend time with consumer AI. So like how people are going to actually interact and play with these products for productivity purposes. The whole idea is that it'll anticipate your needs and wants and tell you what you want better than you will. But even if we get to that point, or when we get to that point, if you got good at prompting today, you'll be a superhuman, much more, you'll have a bigger advantage whenever that time comes. So that's my biggest thing, is just keep prompting. And how do you do that? Just spend more time talking to ChatGPT. Ask it, how can I get better answers from you? How can I structure my questions to you? What did you not understand? Finding out what it can't do is just as powerful as finding out how to get it to do what you want.
Yeah. Pritesh, bring us home, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think his response is like really, really spot on. I would say if you really want to learn how AI works, then you got to use it. There is no book. The books will teach you how to prompt, but that doesn't bring you the intuition that you need, that you need to build in order to be ready for, like, you know, a year from now, like what Marc was mentioning. So in my opinion, I think just try to build the intuition. And the only way to build the intuition is to actually use it on a daily basis or a minute by minute basis. You're making a presentation. Don't try to get creative. Like, get the first version from ChatGPT and then you put your intelligence on top of it. Or you'll be writing an email. So don't try to spell check it first, which is like default in your email. Like, get the email written by AI and then, you know, see if you want to improve it. So I think just inserting AI and asking yourself, can I ask this to ChatGPT? And if the answer is yes, just do it for fun anyways. And then you can choose not to use it, right? But that's going to build the intuition. And I think that's really what it is.
So good.
One thing before, I know we got to wrap up, but I've obviously listened to this podcast for a while. I met you guys in Banff. I know this is all about the super app, and I have a hot take on this. So I just wanted to put this one thing out there. So this idea of a super app around real estate, and you could look at all these different super apps out there. I use WeChat as an example, this sort of one app to rule them all. So my hot take is that I don't think it's ever going to happen for real estate. And my reason for that is because we don't have a technical issue as to why we don't have a super app. For any crack team, there is funding out there, and they can put all of the features together that eventually make a product, that eventually act as a platform, that provide all of the value in the world across the board in real estate. We do not have a technical or a team issue. There's a regulatory issue in real estate. You can do all these things technically. You cannot do all of the things needed to build that end-to-end experience for a user in real estate. You can do that technically. You can't do it from a regulatory standpoint. Everything from just accessing MLS all the way through to the legal aspects of it, the financial side of it, right? The traditional banking system. These are not product issues. These are not tech issues. These are regulatory issues. And that to me is the biggest issue. And I think there's a lot of that across the board. So that's like a policy problem. So that's the one roadblock that I see in a real estate super app, is that we can do it, but we're not allowed.
Yeah, we're working through a lot of regulatory stuff both in the U.S. and Canada right now, which is wild. Marc, we both, Pritesh and I, loved spending time with you in Banff, and thank you for spending time with us and our agents. The book's already out, truFounder, so y'all should go get that. We'll make sure to link that up. But if people want more of you, how can they find you? Where should they go, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing that's relevant to real estate, we obviously built the AI tool realestatecontent.ai. So if people like what we talk about, like just kind of the vibe and how we approach AI, that's a tool that we're currently building in real time to help agents with their content. That's going to be the easiest way to check us out. We do tons of talks around there as well, too. On the personal side, my Instagram is darkmark_. If you like business, if you like motorsport, or if you just kind of want to follow the journey, hit me up there. Love connecting with other founders. So just send me a DM, send me a message. Always down to chat. And also looking forward to regrouping with you guys at some point. So
super good. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Marc Lafleur, super excited to have you on, our first inaugural guest on the Super App podcast. So thank you, man. Super excited to be with you.